Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, you asked me to say a few words about the Open Know-how initiative. So first, a bit about me. So Jérémy Bonvoisin, I'm an assistant professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Bath in England. I've been there for a few years, and before that I was in Berlin, the Technical University of Berlin. My field of research is sustainable product development. I've spent some years in making research in environmentally friendly product design, and now I'm more switched to citizen participation in product development, and this is what led me to look at the topic of open source hardware. So just to explain my personal path to the topic of open source hardware. At the University of Bath, it's quite interesting and nice. We have a vibrant little group on open source hardware. I don't know, maybe you've heard about Richard Bowman and Julian Stilling. They are members of the GOSH, and quite active members, and developers of Open Fletcher microscope. Do you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. So about the Open Know-how initiative you asked me to say a few words about. So this is an initiative started by Andrew Lamb for the, he's a Shuttleworth Fellow and member of Field Ready. You may have heard about Field Ready. They are an engineering company on disaster relief, well, in the field of disaster relief, and they produce quite a lot of open source hardware devices. What Andrew was missing in the last years, being active in developing open source hardware, are some standards to share documentation and to find documentation, and this is why he created this initiative. But the aims of these initiatives are to improve discoverability, portability, and interoperability of open source hardware. So discoverability is about making existing published hardware and shared hardware online more easily to find and to share. Portability is more about make sure that the documentation of a piece of hardware could be transported from one platform to the other, or could be integrated in more easily integrated in other products. And interoperability is about well, making reusable or improving the reusability of open source hardware. So this initiative started last summer in Warsaw. We had a meeting of like 20 people around this initiative from a bit all around the world. People from the Open Source Hardware Association, people from Appropedia, people from Fab Labs, from universities, a bit from everywhere. And since we're meeting, we now release a beta version of the first standard, which is on discoverability. Maybe what I've not explained earlier is that so the aims of this initiative are to improve discoverability, portability, and interoperability. And the plan is to deliver for each of these keywords one standard at a time. So the first thing we concentrated on was discoverability, and for that we already released the first standard. The main idea of that is to make hardware documentation metadata accessible to web crawlers using machine-readable data. So basically the idea is that this standard defines a file format for what we call a manifest. So basically it's a file containing some key metadata of your project documentation, your product documentation. And you put that next to your README file or your license in your repository or where you have your documentation. And because this file is machine readable, it could be found and read by crawlers, and then it will make your hardware, your piece of hardware, of open source hardware, more easily portable to, well, not portable, but it will be more easy for database to discover that there is this piece of hardware, and for them to fetch information to show this piece of hardware in a central place, if that makes sense. Yeah, so the idea is just to create this ID of the manifest file that you will put next to your license. The standards defines a file format for that, which is a markup language called TOML. Well, maybe it's a bit too much in detail, but actually it's supposed to be easy to use. You have some kind of this manifest template, then you copy paste some key metadata from the documentation into this file. You save it with your documentation, and actually that's it. And just this simple step will make way easier for web crawlers to find your hardware and to reference it in databases. Yeah. So that's about the Open Know-how initiative, where we stand now. The working group is still working on settle some details of the file format for this first standard, and then we will continue in looking for standards for portability and interoperability in the future. Yeah.
Can we ask questions in between?
Yeah, please, yeah.
I go a bit back to the history. I was wondering if you can elaborate a bit more on how you all came together, or like what happened before you started the initiative.
Oh, yeah. I guess it's a long story of meeting people and say, oh, we should make something together, and then not making anything for years. And then at a certain point of time, there was this guy, Andrew, who just put everybody around the table. So basically, I mean, I met Andrew and the guys from Field Ready. They are also closely related to some other people who are in an initiative which is called MakerNet. Maybe you've heard about Anna Lowy. Well, anyway, so we around some research project we had on open source hardware, we made those guys. They were related with some other guys, with some people of the Journal of Open Hardware. You may know Toby Wenzel and with Felipe Murillo. So those guys are pretty active in the field of open science hardware or open source hardware. So basically, all these guys and these people knew each other and had the feeling that there is a need for standards or standardization in open source hardware. And at some certain point of time, just Andrew had the willingness and the money to do it, and he just invited us all around the table, and then we just made it. Does it answer your question, or was it more specific?
No, that's exactly what I wanted to ask. Andrew who? Sorry.
Lamb. I'll write it.
I have.
I just wrote in the group chat. If you click on the link I sent you, actually everything I tell you now, I just wrote an outline of that. I'm just reading actually to a text I prepared for this meeting, so you will find those details over there as well. So Julieta, you asked me to say a few words about Open Know-how initiative, and I have the feeling that it wouldn't be complete if I wouldn't say a few words about other related initiatives. Have the feeling that this Open Know-how initiative is part of something bigger happening at this moment in the open source hardware community. So we have interesting initiatives going into the same direction of standardization and more discoverability of hardware, and as well more settlement of standard practices. So next to the Open Know-how initiative, there is one nice thing which is called the Observatory of Open Source Hardware, which is a website, oho.wiki. The website is unfortunately not working today. I don't know why, but I flagged this to the owners of the website. It was working perfectly for a few days ago, and I don't know why they must have some bug today. But so this website, oho.wiki, is a database referencing open source hardware, well, products, prototypes. It's not limited to open science hardware, so it's not only about instrumentation for science, it's also about consumer market, or anything that is open source and is hardware, basically. At the beginning, the idea of this website was created in a research project we had in TU Berlin a few years ago, where we were studying open source hardware as an object of research and try to look at how open source hardware works, basically. And so we needed to have some kind of database of existing hardware. And so we've been looking for a lot of examples of open source hardware, and then we saw that there are lists here and there, like on the P2P, on the website of the P2P Foundation, there are some lists of open hardware. On Wikipedia, there are some lists of open hardware. So we really felt the need to create some kind of meta initiative that will crawl the web and then fetch automatically information about open source hardware, and then put it in a database that is queryable, that is where you can like enter queries and find, like, for example, if you're looking for a wheel for a car, then you type wheel, and then you got open source hardware prompt which match your query, basically. So this is the idea of the Observatory of open source hardware: make an automatic database that crawls the web for open source hardware. And while the Open Know-how Initiative, the standard, and the Observatory of Open Hardware is really related, because Open Know-how is about creating a file format that makes documentation, metadata easy accessible for crawlers, and the Observatory of open source hardware is one of the crawlers that can use this metadata. So these are two bunch of people really closely working together. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me if there's something is not clear, if I'm too quick or diverging from the topic.
Sorry, Jeremy. So thank you for telling us about it. I was curious. I didn't have the time to check it in depth. So which is the main information? And I remember I wanted to ask you because of this. I think in the last gathering, of course, or the previous one in Chile, I don't remember when, it was like established or consensus that the need of standards that are able to reflect not only the standard part, but also allow the heterogeneity part, like the difference part that open hardware has. Yeah. So which are the fields, or which is the information that goes?
Oh yeah, well, I can show you through, basically. Give me one moment to. Can I share a screen, actually?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will make that. Give me 1 second. How much time do we have, actually?
Legally 1 hour, let's say.
Just for that, or for everything?
No, for everything, but in general, the calls take between 40 minutes and 1 hour.
Yeah, but you have other agenda points, don't you?
No, not really, because we switched format. Yeah.
Okay. So I try to share my screen, and I show you through. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So we are now on the website, which is called Standards Repo. So the Standards Repo is some kind of startup. They are creating online platforms, an online platform for creating standards in an open source way, basically. So instead of having a closed traditional standardization organization like ISO or DIN for Germany, then you have a website. But anyway, so this is what I'm scrolling through is the Open Know-how Manifest Specification version 1.2. It's the beta version we just released with some information, but I'll go directly to what is of interest to your question, which is the file format or the template, which is here. So basically, you have. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yep.
Positive.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So you have some kind of it's a markup language with a way to structure data, and so the typical field you have is date created. So the date you created the manifest, the author of the manifest, name, affiliation, email, the language, the documentation language, and in which language documentation is written. It's been more specific, the title of your hardware, description of your hardware, what is the intended use of the hardware, if there are some keywords you'd like to share, like the main page, like the web page of your hardware, if there is any healthy and safety notices, contact, name, affiliation, email, social media, other contributors, name, affiliation, and email, an image, something that represents your hardware, the version if you have some, which development stage is your piece of hardware, has it been already made, where there are you aware about some replications of your hardware, blah blah blah. So there's quite a lot of different fields you could use, but the standard itself just defines this template, but doesn't say what is mandatory. So basically, depending on what you have, you will be able to fill out more or less of these fields, and it's perfectly okay. You just share what you have, and some field may not be relevant for some pieces of hardware, may be relevant for others. So this diversity of the open source hardware field is really reflected in the flexibility of this manifest file. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So your next stage, I guess, is kind of what you were saying, building the crawlers for, I don't know, put it in Wikidata,
yes,
I guess, or something like that.
I wouldn't say that it's the next stage, because it's not part of the Open Know-how initiative to build those crawlers. The Open Know-how initiative wants to ease the work of crawlers, and but we have this other project which works in parallel, which is the Observatory of Open Source Hardware, and that is intended to create such a crawler. And we also have a nice synergy here with the TU Berlin and in 19 countries, 19 partners in 7 countries. We just got a EU project funded, so a big EU project for 3 years on open source hardware. This project is called Open Next. So we are partnering with many fab labs and companies, as well as some universities across Europe. One of the objectives of that is actually to support the development of the Observatory of Open Source Hardware. So we also bring some resources into that and link it with ongoing activities of this research project. So this is another related activity. And then the last thing I think, which is also interesting, is another standardization initiative, which is called DIN Spec 3501. Well, sorry, 3105. I always mix up the numbers. So DIN, because of DIN is a German standardization organization, and spec is a type of hardware they have. A type of standard they have. So basically, with them now, with this standardization organization, we are creating a standard about open source hardware, and this standard focuses on documentation, requirements for documentation.
Okay. And sorry, I had a question there.
Yeah.
It's similar to something you wrote, like the good practices for documentation. It goes in that direction.
Well, yes. I guess these good practices was really early work I made in this back 3 years ago or 4 years ago in this research project we had in Berlin, try to look at hardware and what are the best practices and share those best practices. But then across meeting people and talking about that, we felt that there is a need for a real standard to put nice definitions and clear definitions on what is required in terms of documentation for open source hardware. And the guys from Open Source Ecology Germany really took on this aspect, and they went to the they went to the DIN, to the German standardization organization, and started a standardization process with them. So we have also in this group people from the OSHWA, we have some people from GOSH as well, and some practitioners of open source hardware. The idea is actually to extend the OSHWA definition, because the definition of the OSHWA definition of open source hardware actually only says about licensing schemes underlying open source hardware, but they don't really say what is the exact information you need to license. And this is the gap which is supposed to be filled by this new upcoming standard. We are hoping to release a public documentation, a public version in the next weeks or month. So for public commenting. So basically, it will be about sharing this draft and gathering feedback to improve it, right? So this is another initiative regarding standardization practices in open hardware. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if anyone has any question, because if not, I'm interrupting all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So is this open to collaborations? Is this a standard like?
Well, the DIN spec is actually, there was it isn't really open at the start. So basically, we built a consortium with the guys from Open Source Ecology Germany. So we try to, by contact, basically by word of mouth, to motivate people to participate. And then we created this consortium. This consortium is working on the first draft since I would say 6 months to 1 year. I don't remember exactly. But because the way the processes are at the German standardization organization, we couldn't make it open really. So what we do is to develop the draft between us, basically, and then open it for commenting in the last phase. But an interesting side effect of that is that we motivated the German standardization organization to review their processes and to create an extra process for open access standardization processes. So basically, this standard will be the first standard ever in Germany to be licensed with a Creative Commons license. And it would have opened the doors for more participation, more citizen participation in creating standards. So I think there's a nice side effect of it. So to answer your question, no, actually, the process is not as open as we would have liked it to be, but we are working on it. And well, we made sure at the beginning that we have a consortium which is large enough to reflect different views from different stakeholders of open source hardware. And we also will put a lot of emphasis on this commenting and improvement phase, a public commenting phase that will be upcoming in the next weeks or months.
Okay.
Does it answer your question?
Yeah, I was referring more for not to the DIN, to the other one, to the.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, the first draft. Well, here again, I mean, there is always an element of closeness because at certain point of time you need to meet around a table and then to write things on post-its or in physical documents and then put it online. So basically this is what we did in Warsaw last summer, but early on we made everything available online, but we didn't really reach out because it was a bit too drafty, I don't know how to say. Now we have a draft that makes sense already, but still has a lot to improve in it. And if you go to one of the to this page I just showed you, so basically what's behind that is a Git repository. So basically the standard is a text file in a Git repository, and you have the possibility to submit issues, and anybody can submit an issue. If you see that something is wrong in the standard, you can create an issue, and then there will be we are about to create processes to open processes to treat these issues.
Good.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. So everyone can collaborate through GitHub.
Yeah, to this, the website is called Standards Repo, but basically it builds upon Git to create an interface for open collaboration on text documents, basically, on standards.
Very nice. So how does the group follow? How are you going to keep working on this from now?
Yeah, so current states and next steps. So we have a beta version of the standard now online. So this is what I've just shown you here. This open know-how manifest specification version 1.0. We still need to settle some details of the machine readable format. So I just had a meeting today on the morning, and we'll have another meeting tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to come with something testable in the next weeks. And then our objective is to, by the end of the year, to have more than 50 examples of manifests that we will create inside the group. So each of us have some open source hardware project we could create a manifest for. So we will do that to show that how it works. And then we'll reach out to a wider community and hope for some kind of snowball effect. So basically, yeah, try to motivate people to adopt the standard, to create manifest files for their documentation, to put them these manifest files next to their license and README files on their repositories. And then we hope through that some take up of the standard. One of the big steps we will have as well is to collaborate with open source hardware repository platforms so that they implement in their platforms an automatic generation of the manifest files. So basically we are working with Wikifactory, Acropedia, Evolver, and other platforms so that they implement in their own platform, so that it's automatic that there is a manifest file which is created when you create a repository, so that users or originators of open source hardware wouldn't even have to create the manifest by themselves. So this is also two routes.
Hey, hey, this is Liz in Brooklyn.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for all this. Can you explain how Acropedia, which is a wiki-based website, could have that kind of automatic generation that you just discussed?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not part of the working group directly dealing with that, so I don't know, to be honest.
I can give some information on that. Emilio, who is working in Acropedia, and I think he's also collaborating, right, with this.
Yeah, he's our main contact with Acropedia. Yeah.
I don't. That's another step. Like we've been talking with him, and because there is a need of the wiki to start incorporating this kind of organizing norms or rules to be able to search it more efficiently, and not only to be findable like for the external world, but also to manage all the knowledge that is in Apropedia more effectively. And some options that we've been talking about because of a wiki-based workshop I attended in Zurich not so long ago is to discuss about implementing a wiki-based layer on top of the media wiki that is already ongoing.
Okay. Yeah. Please going on. Sorry.
So we are exploring that. We are just talking about that, but there's no like a.
With whom are you working on that? Because I'm asking this question because in this EU project, we have actually we are working with Wikimedia Germany to create a wiki-based instance that will for the Observatory of Open Source Hardware. So basically, we are looking at ways to use the wiki data technology to structure information or metadata related to open source hardware, and to use that for all the initiatives that I mentioned today. So we have people working on that. So it would be interesting to try to find synergies here, I guess.
Yeah, that would be great. And in fact, I wanted to talk to you about that by the end of the call, because I found out about it like a week ago that you were on, not you, but this project existed.
Yeah.
No, it started because I'm collaborating with Wikimedia Switzerland here because I use Wikidata for my own thesis data and as an experiment. And I thought it was a good way to start structuring some data on open source hardware. Mm-hmm. Especially in open science hardware, which is the focus of my thesis. Mm-hmm. And the next step is always, well, Wikidata has some limitations, so why not creating a wiki-based instance for this? And that's like that I don't know how I started talking about this to Emilio, and he told me, oh, there is this open know-how. So the open know-how metadata, like structured data, could perfectly be the basis of an ontology for the wiki-based instance.
Yeah.
But it's all, I mean, right now I'm trying to I talked to people from Wikimedia Germany, so some developers, to see if they saw it possible to
okay. So you're already in contact with them?
No, I just talked in a workshop that I attended, but in the Apropedia case, I think it's a bit more complex because it's not that you have to generate a wiki-based instance from scratch, but you have already a wiki there, and it's quite a heavy wiki.
Yeah.
So that process, I'm currently looking for orientation on that, just because I'm interested in the topic and I'm friends with Emilio. So if you happen to know about any ideas, that would be great. But I think it's like an efficient way to work with data.
Yeah, personally, I don't know. I could have pointed you to the people I know, but it seems that you know them anyway. So,
this is Liz again in Brooklyn, and saying I'd love to stay connected with this conversation. Like, what would the implications be for publiclab.org, which is another extensive repo of all kind of open hardware and etc. platforms? How can I connect with?
Maybe we can all talk. I don't know what.
What was the platform you mentioned?
It's publiclab.org. And if you go /research,
Liz?
you can see
Am I still connected?
Yeah, I hear you. But Liz, is Public Lab wiki? Yes, but
it is. It's not media wiki though.
Public Lab.
Oh, okay.
It's not open. It's public.
We don't have to go into it now. I just wanted to kind of throw my hand up and say, hey, this is we're really concerned with this great work as well. How can we, standardize with you all?
It would be nice. I'm just talking on. It would be nice to, at least, if we started structuring data, use the structure of open know-how or whatever standard the community is adopting.
I'm sorry, I have some connectivity issues, and
What
I
happens
can't
is
hear you.
probably Jeremy has more information, but from my side, it's the process of doing this in a sustainable way in which all this information can be structured with these rules. Well, we need some help from developers or somehow.
Yeah. Well,
there is just searching the web and while I attended this workshop with these people.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Jeremy left, but while I attended this workshop with the people, Liz, I met some people working on professional wiki or something like that. They are part of Wikimedia Germany, and I can put the link in the notes if you want. They offer the service of transforming wikis, among other things, transforming wikis into with a layer of structured data. So I'm going to just yeah. I mean that's what I was looking for. So I will just chat with them to see if they are still working and which are their suggestions.
Sorry, I had connectivity issues. Can you resume? Not resume.
I can hear
summarize.
you now. Do you hear us?
Yes, I hear now.
I was telling Liz that I met that in this workshop, someone from Wikimedia Germany suggested me a group that is working on providing services on how to make a professional wiki. And one of the services they provide is giving you advice on how to structure how to add the Wikibase layer to a media wiki. So I'm going to talk to them soon, next week, I think. But anyway, it's just conversations we're having. So if you have a project on that and you want to tell us more about it.
That's great. I tried to type notes for what you were saying, Julieta, on line 42 of the Gosh Call pad. I'd love to, stay connected. Thank you so much.
I'll put the link there. If I find it, it's somewhere. I don't know if Jeremy is still here.
I'm here. Yeah. I'm back.
So
I missed like the 2 last minutes, but yeah.
So what is this? What is this project about? Because I see a lot of potential, and there are lots of activities going on with Wikibase, also from the Wikimedia Foundation. But which is the way you are going to address this? Do you think?
Okay. So this EU-funded project, you mean?
I think so, right? Is the one about?
Yeah. So it's a big project with like a total envelope of €6 million over 3 years. So a lot of people involved. And what I mentioned about Wikibase is one tiny bit inside it. And I'm not personally involved into that, so I won't be able to tell that much. But depending, well, I can connect you to the people, definitely. So there is one guy from, well, there is a group from Berlin, Germany. Well, I can give you the names. I can just send you per mail, or if you put me a mail, I will contact. Will put you in contact with those guys. I think I'm not really sure the approach I will take, so I don't want to say too much. But the idea of this overall project is to foster adoption of open source product development practices in businesses. So basically, the assumption is that, or the starting point of the project, to say that open source hardware is great, and but for the moment, it's just a matter of grassroots communities and academics, and there is a real potential in using open source hardware in businesses as well, like for consumer products or infrastructure products or whatever. and then we'll try with businesses to explore the possibility of changing their businesses by including open source hardware in their business portfolio. So this is one part of this is the overall objective. But this breaks down into a lot of different sub-projects, and one project is to make open source hardware more discoverable, to more reusable.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's very related to something we were discussing always in Gosh. It's how to make information that is there in Gosh findable and easy to access for newcomers. Because usually I say, oh, great, you are a person that probably would be very interested in Gosh, go to the forum. And the forum is quite, I mean, it's nice, but sometimes it's quite chaotic for understanding what is Gosh and finding information. So for me, I think this is quite a very useful approach to mapping what we have. Besides also the work with Apropedia. And Liz, I saw you wrote the wiki for Public Lab. I remember talking to Emilio and saying, hey, also look at the wiki of Public Lab. So yeah, these are similar cases.
And basically with the open know-how, once we'll have made those first steps of having a stable version of the file format and have creating some like 50 examples we can show, and have made some more thorough tests of how this could be used by crawlers, and this should happen in the next weeks, basically, at the farthest at the end of the year. Then we will reach out to the wider community and say, hey guys, you could use that. How you could engage already today would be, I can share our website. So this initiative has a website, which is simply openknowhow.org. I share that in the group chat. And if you want to send me links to your projects or send me links to the repositories you are using, so that we can ping you back later when we have a stable version and tell you how to use the standard, I will be really happy to put that in our mailing list and to put that in the list of contacts we need to reach out at the end of the year, and then I'll come back to you, and then we'll help you to implement the thing. Are you still here?
Yeah, we can hear you, but you're cutting out a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
No, I mean, I don't know if everyone got that, but you are still kind of in drafting mode, and you will have a release soon.
Yes.
So we should give you contacts for you to ping us back. Huh?
Yes, one possibility is just to reach out to me and give and tell me, yeah, I'm interested in knowing more, or we have this project we want to make discoverable, so you can give me the link of your project, and once we are done with the last bits of details we need to sort out, I can reach back to you. The other way to do with that, it will be to go to openknowhow.org, and then the first thing you will see appearing in this website is join the Open Know-how community, and so you will be you'll be embedded in this whole process. Either if you want to participate in further development of the standard, or if you just want to use it.
Oh,
All right.
I think I got you, but you are cutting off because of the connection.
Okay, sorry.
No, I think we could get everything. I don't know if anyone has any other comment or question.
Yeah, I have a question. It's related specifically about the decision for the DIN spec standardization, because I don't know what I saw. That's a kind of, it's not a mandatory one. It's just a recommendation. It's a kind of recommendation for a standard. And I would like to know more about why the decision to start these Dean standards. If this only it's not like a mandatory one. So why to put effort on this process if it's closed, and also have this more like a recommendation, define parameters. It's not like enough. What's the other one? This is standard repo. It's not enough. It's necessary something else to give a strong background.
I'm not sure I understand your question, because you're talking about standard repo, which is a
yeah, like my question is why to use the Dean spec instead,
because it's visible. It's I mean, when you have a like
it's more about
it's
the
an
weight.
official, yeah, it's an official standard.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about the weight. Yeah.
Okay.
But as I said earlier, so we are working with the DIN to change their processes and to make sure that the second version of the standard will be fully open for the beginning. And that's the big thing in this project.
Yeah.
And the motivation for creating the standard basically dates back from this research project we had in Berlin a few years ago, where we looked at a wide range, a lot of different projects, and we saw there is such a diversity of sharing practices, which is actually not, which you could not really explain from the diversity of the projects. It's just that those people would have a different understanding of the minimal requirements applying to your documentation. So you can call your product open source hardware. So there is a gap in defining exactly what is the source of open source hardware, what is the information you need to share, so you can call genuinely your product or your hardware open source. And this is the consensus we are trying to build at the moment.
Okay, great.
So the idea is also not only to make a definition just for the sake of making a definition, but basically we are interested in extending the OSHWA certification program for open source hardware.
Oh, okay. So this would become an extension of the certification. Okay.
Hopefully, yes. Yeah, this is the idea.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I have one comment. So I shared with you the notes I've prepared for telling you about this. I share it again in the group chat. So you have at the end quite a lot of links to well, my webpage, but also the Open Know-how Working Group, the beta version, which is already published, and it is open for commenting. The Observatory of Open Source Hardware, the oho.wiki. We have as well the DIN spec 3105, sorry, open source hardware, and also one other link is our EU project, opennext.eu. Yeah.
Thank you so much for all this, Jeremy. I have a quick question about on the website openknowhow.org. It makes sense, the trio of promote knowledge sharing, developing open standards, and increasing adoption. And the documentation section is really great. And then down below, there's a section that confuses me where it says machines and tools, skills and people, materials, contracts.
Yes. So basically, well, this website we're just building it at the moment, so there is not. I mean, the highest value of this website for now is just to be there, to be identifiable, that there are our contacts, and there is this button at the top, join open know-how community. What may confuse you is that at the same time, the people behind open know-how, so Andrew Lamb and the MakerNet, they are trying to, they have several initiatives in parallel, and another initiative they have is what they call the Internet of Production. So basically they try, well, I'm not sure if I can explain that well, because I'm not sure if I understood it well, and I'm not part of it. It is about make it easier. Once you have a documentation for open source hardware online, make it easier to source the parts and the materials so you can replicate it, and eventually create some kind of marketplace for making those things, right? I couldn't tell more about that. If you're interested in it, I encourage you to take contact with Andrew Lamb.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I am interested in, I had understood when you began talking that this was an academic hosted project, but now that I see the Open Know-How 2019, all rights reserved at the bottom, it seems like this may be, is it potentially a commercial project that's spinning out?
It is not an academic project. I didn't intend to tell that. I am from academia, and I'm taking part in that, as a number of other scholars. And most people are actually either, well, most people in those initiatives are scholars or independent, or well, nearly nobody of them is really in a business on open hardware. Well, that's not really true to say that, but no, it is not the idea to make a business out of this standard or out of these initiatives. The idea is really to help to make open source hardware, well, to help open source hardware to thrive, basically. So this is not something like we are building something so we can build people for something. It's not the idea. Is it clear?
Okay,
or
yes, it is clear, but I guess it was, the part that was not clear was that there were like EU grants that I thought were coming into universities for this.
Yes, well, the EU grants are going for universities and companies. So half of the partners of our EU project are companies, and they get money for being in the research project. So EU money, EU research money doesn't mean necessarily academia. But I mean, this EU project is just one of the different initiatives I mentioned. The main initiative we'll be looking at now is this Open Know-How, and this Open Know-How is funded by the Shuttleworth Foundation, which is a charity, and there is no requirement for them to have some kind of return on investment on that. They are not venture capitalists. Basically, we are not building a company out of that. So there are a lot of different people voluntarily involved in this project, and they all have their own reasons to be in this project. But there is no like one guiding entity that says where the journey goes and that says we will make business out of that. It's more a group of people having a common interest and in creating those standards.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't know if there is any other quick question we can make it. If not, we are quite on time and we should. I
have one question. Can you send back once again in the group chat the link to your notes?
Oh yeah, it's on the.
Because
Okay.
I lost them. I lost them because I was disconnected for a few minutes.
I'm sending it now. Give me a second, because again, as I was saying, I'm in the phone, so it's very complicated. Okay, there they are. Feel free to add anything you want to the notes. What I usually do is then I will copy that to a repository where we have all the notes backed up. So feel free to keep adding information today, and then I'll copy that.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation, Jeremy. It's a super.
Well, thanks for the invitation. It was a pleasure to talk about that.
I will probably ping you afterwards because
Yeah.
of different things. But
Yeah.
it was
With
very
pleasure.
informative. And okay, if anyone else, we are done. Any comment? Any question? Any presentation? Do you want to say hi? Do you want to talk about your project? This is the moment. You have 5 minutes. If not, we are closing.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Well, thank you for listening and asking those questions.